Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can find out about past shows and listen to this one as well on my website, which is right behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield. I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Maya Van Rossum, founder of Green Amendments for the Generation, also Delaware Riverkeeper, also an author, also a giver of great advice on TikTok. Maya, welcome aboard to the show. Good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me, Blaine. It's wonderful to be back again.
I'm trying to think, we were talking off the air. It must have been a whole bunch of years ago that we first talked. So it's so cool to have you again. And I think even when we first met, did you actually come to, I was in a studio in Trenton, New Jersey. I think you probably
I
came to a
believe
studio.
so.
Okay,
Yeah.
wow, long time ago. So what a treat to have you back on. Maya Van Rossen is the founder of Green Amendments for the Generations, a grassroots nonprofit organization inspiring a nationwide movement to secure constitutional recognition and protection of environmental rights in every state and ultimately at the federal level. She is also the Delaware Riverkeeper, leading the watershed-based advocacy organization and Delaware Riverkeeper Network for 30 years. So you started what, when you were like 8 or 9? Was that when you started that?
Exactly. And now I'm just 15.
Okay,
So,
the youngest Delaware Riverkeeper of all time for 30 years in an effort to protect the health of the Delaware River and its tributaries. Skilled activist, attorney, strategist, and community organization leader. She is the author of the Green Amendment, The People's Right for a Clean, Safe, and Healthy Environment. And coincidentally, I see that behind you. Is that the book?
yes, that's the book.
Okay, very cool. And so my question I always ask when I meet somebody for a webcast is, in terms as a child, you grew up where?
I grew up in Pennsylvania,
Where in Pennsylvania?
just outside of Philadelphia, actually in the Delaware River watershed. We moved here when I was a year and a half. I was actually born in India, and then we moved to the United States.
So when you were a child growing up in Pennsylvania, did you always know you wanted to be a Delaware River keeper?
Well, I didn't know that there was such a thing as the Delaware Riverkeeper, but I knew that I loved nature. I knew that I loved fighting for what was right, whether it was defending people or nature against some injustice. And I just had the great fortune that in my life, I found a way to bring together my belief in defending nature, protecting nature, and also defending what's right and standing up for justice.
Was there back then a Delaware River keeper? Were you the first one?
Yeah, no, there was not. The actual waterkeeper movement began in the 80s. And so the Delaware Riverkeeper Network, my organization, is the second riverkeeper in the nation. And while I'm not the youngest riverkeeper, interesting little factoid, I am actually the longest serving riverkeeper in the world.
At the time when you got the job, I guess, were the youngest at the time?
I may have been. I don't look at those things.
Well, you know, it was cool. I just told my producer this afternoon that, we were talking about the show tonight, and we found there's a river keeper in where we live in the Asheville area. So I said to the person, make sure we get this person as a guest. The river keepers, how many are there in the country?
The truth is, I don't know. I became, when I became the Delaware Riverkeeper, there was the Hudson Riverkeeper, there was the Delaware Riverkeeper, there was the Long Island Sound Keeper. Quickly thereafter, there were a few other keeper organizations. And over time, our work has inspired people nationwide and also around the world. But I really don't keep count. I just am glad to know that there are other people doing good works to fight for rivers and nature.
So is this a national organization though, or it's just everybody is independent?
Every keeper organization is its own independent 501c3 organization. There is a coming together periodically through an entity called the Waterkeeper Alliance, where different organizations stay in touch in different ways. But at its core, every single keeper organization is its own entity. It sets its own rules. It does its own advocacy and its own fundraising. So if you have a riverkeeper or a baykeeper or a soundkeeper in your community, I'm sure that they could use your support, just like I at the Delaware Riverkeeper Network can use support.
So it's perfect. We're leading up to Christmas, of course. It's perfect timing. So if anybody would like to support the efforts of this organization, they'd be more than welcome to do so.
Yeah, and there's actually, for me, right, there's the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. And so if you appreciate the beauty and the values of the Delaware River, then that would be a great organization to support. As you said, I have also a national organization called Green Amendments for the Generations, which we'll talk about. And that's another nonprofit organization where we're fighting for constitutional recognition and protection of environmental rights. And so that's also a 501c3 organization. And of course, the book, The Green Amendment, I think is a great gift for people who would like to be able to share the message, but give a physical gift at the same time.
And take me back, if you would, to the how this got you where you are now. So you were always interested in the environment. You went to school. You went to law school. Were you studying environmental issues then, or was that your focus?
Yes, I went to law school, not to be a lawyer. I am a lawyer, but I went to law school to be a better environmental activist because I understood that the law was really critical for effective environmental protection and really to stand up and defend the environment. So I went to law school to be a better activist. I got my law degree. I, passed the bar in a couple of states, but I put my law degree to work as an activist rather than as an attorney, going into the courtroom. I have attorneys that go into courtroom for me. I get to be the client, but I am a client and an activist that's informed by my legal training and knowledge.
And so you've been you've been in courtrooms and on these issues, but not as the attorney.
That's correct. That's correct. I go up, I'm the witness on the stand, or I'm the, person in the, watching the case, working behind the scenes with the attorneys on the arguments that need to be advanced.
Talk to me about the job itself, because I have to think it's one of the great job titles. You might meet somebody for the first time. Where are you? You're the Delaware Riverkeeper. What exactly does the Delaware Riverkeeper do?
Well, in my role, so the Delaware Riverkeeper is a person, and I am the person honored to bear the title of being the Delaware Riverkeeper. And as the Riverkeeper, my job is to make sure that anytime anybody anywhere is going to take an action that could harm the Delaware River or its watershed or any of its tributary streams, it's my job to make sure that the needs of the river are not just understood, but are given highest priority in terms of their protection. But of course, protecting a river as large as the Delaware that flows through 4 states, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, has a watershed that's 13,539 square miles in size. That is not actually the job of one person, right? That is the job of a community. Protecting all parts of nature is the job of a community. And so I have my nonprofit Delaware Riverkeeper Network filled with activists and scientists and attorneys that work with me on staff to give the river a voice and to help inform and engage communities, tens of thousands of people throughout the Delaware River watershed that join us in our advocacy work, our legal work, and also our river restoration work that we undertake.
I was going to ask you then, so how many people are involved in the Delaware Riverkeeper, I guess, network? It's not just you, it's other people?
Yeah, we have nearly 30,000 members at this point. And everybody gets involved in their own way. Some people donate, which is wonderful and powerful and important. But you don't have to pay, right, to be a member of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network. You just have to care and engage. So some people join with us at public hearings to testify on a critical issue, or they sign or write letters, or they help us do research, or they help us collect data, scientific data that informs our work. Or in our litigation, they may be the individuals that are being directly impacted by a harm or a threat that we're litigating over. And as a result, they help give the organization legal standing so we can actually go into the courtroom and fight the good fight for the beautiful Delaware River. So different people get involved in different ways. There's a place and a space for everyone who cares about the river. And if you have time and you have talent, go to DelawareRiverkeeper.org. You'll find a myriad of issues that you can get involved in.
So it sounds like any given day you're doing a bunch of different things. It doesn't sound like you're doing any one thing any one day. You're doing all these simultaneously.
You are absolutely correct. Every single day is different. I never know what's going to happen. And even if I think that I might have my day planned out where I'm going to testify at a hearing, or I'm just going to hunker down and do some research or write a comment, maybe there's a spill, right? Like we recently had a spill of hazardous chemicals into the river, causing very serious threats of harm. And so I need to go out there and I need to champion the river and make sure the agencies are doing their jobs. Or perhaps a new threat to the Atlantic sturgeon of the Delaware River. We have a genetically unique population that only exists in the Delaware River. And at this point, we have less than 250 spawning adults left. So every single threat is a big deal. So I might learn about a new threat and I need to then hunker down, right, and pivot very quickly and do the work to take on that new threat, that new harm, that new issue. So every day really is different. But all of it is about helping to protect the environment for the health and the safety of people and critters and all of nature.
The only thing I don't see behind you are your roller skates, in terms of getting around. You seem to cover a pretty big territory, like every day,
I fly. I fly. And some people might say I'm flying on my witch's broom, right? Because some people have some pretty unsavory things to say about me. Although being a witch, I don't think would be a bad thing. But no, I really just, I do what I need to do in any given day. I go where I need to be an effective advocate for the river or to do my Green Amendments work.
So now this is the organization itself, and you mentioned people can get involved. It's a nonprofit then, and you have an organization behind it. You're the executive director, or what's your position with it?
So I am the Delaware Riverkeeper. That is my official title. That means
Right.
that I am the lead spokesperson for the river, for the organization. And yes, I am the lead decision maker on behalf of the Delaware Riverkeeper Network in that role. I have 22 staff, again, activists, attorneys, scientists, lawyers, attorneys and lawyers, same thing. And then we also work with our members to undertake this important work.
And your organization is located where?
Physically, the organization currently, the main office is located in Bristol, Pennsylvania. That allows me on any given day to get to the top of the river, the bottom of the river, or either side of the watershed, get there, do a meeting, and get home if I need to. So that's why we're sort of centrally located within that portion of the Delaware River watershed.
And I think somehow that must have been how I met you at Bristol, Pennsylvania. I used to be out of Newtown, Pennsylvania, so somehow we met, and I can't believe it, like 20 plus years. So in addition to this, Maya, talk about then the organization, which I'm not familiar with, the Green Amendments for the Generations. What's that all about?
So Green Amendments for the Generations, it's also a nonprofit 501c3 organization. And I actually founded this organization in 2014. I coined the term Green Amendment to describe a certain type of constitutional amendment that gets added to the Bill of Rights section of our state constitutions and recognizes and protects the rights of all people, including future generations, to pure water, clean air, a safe climate, and healthy environments. And because of this Bill of Rights placement and carefully chosen language, this constitutional amendment, this constitutional Green Amendment, protects the environmental rights of the people in the same most powerful way that we protect other fundamental rights we hold dear, like the right to free speech, the right to freedom of religion. Everybody knows how powerfully those rights are protected because of their Bill of Rights placement and the language utilized to recognize and protect them. Well, with the Green Amendment, you get that same most powerful protection for our environmental rights. And at this point, we have Green Amendments. Well, when I founded the movement, we had a Green Amendment in Pennsylvania and Montana. In Pennsylvania, I founded the movement because we breathed legal life into a long ignored provision that Pennsylvania had. Montana had a similar amendment at that time. And over the course of the last 9 years of work, we've secured a Green Amendment in the state of New York, and we have Green Amendment proposals advancing in 15 other states nationwide.
Very cool. But just listen to, you would think to yourself, how can anybody not think this is the greatest thing since cream cheese? Yet there are people who oppose this. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, many people, when I first talked to them about the Green Amendment, and certainly when I founded the movement 9 years ago, I'm proud to say that it's coming more into common parlance because people really, I think, have been following my work. But when I coined the term Green Amendment, when I wrote my book, when I started my talks back in 2014, people were really shocked to hear that they didn't actually have a right to clean water and clean air. They said, well, what about all these federal and state laws we have focused on environmental protection? And the truth is, the way our state and federal laws work in the United States of America, they're focused on legalizing environmental pollution, degradation, and harm. You get the right reviews and the right permits from the right agencies, you can inflict incredible harm on the environment and as a result on the people. You don't actually have this higher constitutional entitlement that people can use when existing environmental laws fundamentally fail to protect them. So that's sort of the first hurdle is people just hadn't thought about it. And when I bring it to the forefront of their mind, they're like, wow, that really does make sense. But then, yes, it is quite shocking to see government officials and developers and industry representatives actually come forth and say that they don't believe that people should have a right to clean water, clean air, safe climate, and healthy environments in the same way they have a right to other fundamentals of life, like free speech and freedom of religion. It's quite shocking.
Now, so talk about the process, which to me is fascinating. So you go into a state, one of the ones you help get this passed or you're still working on, and what happens that you go about trying to pass a law to give this right to people, and then there's hearings or there's opposition to it. What's the procedure?
So first off, my goal is to get a Green Amendment in every single state across our nation, and ultimately also at the federal level. Because in the US, there's state government has a lot of power when it comes to environmental protection, but so too does the federal government. And so we need constitutional rights that belong to people that can hold state governments accountable and the federal government accountable to fully protect the environment in order to fully protect people. So that's one thing. But I'm starting with the states because getting a constitutional amendment passed is much more accessible at the states. It's much more doable. And as we go forth getting state green amendments, we are laying the foundation actually necessary to ultimately get a federal green amendment. That being said, different states have a different process, but there are usually 1, 2, or 3 of these pathways. Either you can have a citizens initiative, a petition initiative, where citizens go, they craft the language, they get the right number of signatures. Usually it's like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of signatures. And then the language that they've gotten community support for through these proven signatures can go on the ballot, and people can vote whether or not they want to have their constitution amended this way. That's one way. Another way is you can have a constitutional convention where the legislators decide to open up the whole constitution, have delegates that get nominated and come together and reconsider what is in the constitution and what isn't in the constitution, craft out a draft new constitution. And then that goes. And once they do that and they've solidified it and the delegates have voted on it and supported their draft, that draft can go before the people, and the people get to vote to decide whether or not they want to amend their constitution with all the elements that are included in their draft. And then the third way is that, yes, actually you convince your legislators to propose the constitutional amendment language, and then the legislators have to vote. Different states have a different threshold of vote. Sometimes they have to vote once. Sometimes they have to vote twice. Sometimes it's majority vote. Sometimes it's 2/3 or 3/5. It's a little different everywhere. But once the legislators vote for this language in the appropriate number of times at the appropriate level, then the amendment goes before the people, and the people get to decide whether or not they want to amend their constitution. That third pathway is the pathway that most often is being followed in the Green Amendment movement, although there is a citizens petition effort that has been advancing in the state of Florida.
If somebody's watching or listening to this and they want to find out about the status in their state, what's the best bet?
If you go to my website, www.forthegenerations.org, Under the About Us tab, there's an option, a menu option that says Active States. Click on there and you will see whether or not you have a Green Amendment effort advancing in your state, and you can learn more about it by clicking, on your state. If you don't see your state there, but you want to be the person to help start a Green Amendment movement in your state, you can get in touch with me and we can start to talk about how we might make that happen.
Is that typically what happens, that somebody wants to get involved in this and then just starts it from scratch almost?
Yeah, I mean, Green Amendments in different states start different ways, but it's usually because a single individual or a single organization or a single caring legislator heard about it, read the book, heard my message, listened to a podcast like this and said, I want to do that. And they get in touch and we start to talk about how to get the ball rolling in their state. What is appropriate Green Amendment language for their state? Because it's not cookie cutter anywhere, right? There's certain criteria that have to be met to get this strongest Green Amendment protection. And I do certainly have model language, but every state is a little bit different. They have their own different personalities and their own different priorities. So we really work together early on with those that get involved in the effort early on to come up with the language that feels right for that state. And then we work together to think about the educational programming and opportunities that I can help them advance. And they work on advocacy strategies and other efforts, and it's sort of this very organic coming together of a movement that can start very small, but very quickly grow powerfully large, because people really do understand this idea. I should have a right to clean water and clean air. My children should have the right to a healthy environment and a safe climate. And so people come together pretty quickly once the ball gets rolling.
Were you involved when it got, were you the person involved in Pennsylvania when it got started? It got passed?
So the Pennsylvania Amendment was actually passed in 1971. But what happened was, almost as soon as it got passed, it got robbed of its legal life by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And they literally declared it to be just a statement of policy, essentially good advice
Right.
that legislators could ignore if they chose to, and they did choose to. And so for 42 years, you had this really powerful language on the books, but nothing changed in Pennsylvania until the Pennsylvania legislature passed a very pro-fracking law in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Fracking was already happening in Pennsylvania, but it would have gotten exponentially worse if this law had been allowed to pass. Fracking would have been happening in every part of every community in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, as close as 300 feet from homes and hospitals, schools, and playgrounds. Automatic waivers from environmental protection standards would have kicked in for the fracking industry, and so much more. In my role as the Delaware Riverkeeper, I and my organization, when that law was passed, knew that we had to challenge it and defeat it before it could inflict this devastating harm. As we were thinking about our legal strategies, we hearkened back, right? We recognized that we had this powerful constitutional language. And we thought that this law was so egregious that maybe we could get the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to overturn that 42 years of bad precedent and breathe life into Pennsylvania's. Then it was called an Environmental Rights Amendment. I coined the term Green Amendment. So I call it a Green Amendment, but that is a specific terminology referencing a certain kind of environmental rights amendment. Anyway, and so in 2013, December 2013, we got this powerful victory that did in fact overturn the devastating provisions of that law, breathe legal life into Pennsylvania's amendment. And I said to myself, wow, this is transformational. We should have this everywhere. And so I looked at what was special about Pennsylvania's amendment, what made it so powerful. And then I looked at every state constitution across our nation and found that only Montana had similar language. And I decided I would change that. So I wasn't there for the founding of the actual language when Senator Franklin Curry spearheaded getting that added to the Pennsylvania Constitution, but I certainly did play a pivotal role in ensuring that Pennsylvania's Green Amendment was making a meaningful and transformational difference in environmental protection in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And then, I coined the term, the Green Amendment. I wrote the book. I started my talks and really have just tried to inspire and support communities who want to make this kind of change where they live.
Just listen to you. I'm kind of amazed at just the excitement in not only your voice, but listen to you at how exciting it must be when one of these amendments get passed. When you started from just 2 states to a bunch of states, do they ever get not passed or not defeated or not move forward? Does that ever happen?
So since the founding of the movement, New York has passed an amendment. So we've had that thrill, and it was passed just under 2 years ago, and it's already making a powerful difference for communities, giving them protections that they otherwise were unable to secure before having the amendment. So that's really important demonstration. And in Pennsylvania and Montana, we see powerful progress. In fact, the Held v. Montana youth climate case that people read a lot about recently, that was based on the Montana Green Amendment. To get a constitutional amendment is a high hurdle. That's actually one of the values of it. It's harder to get, but that also means that once you secure it, you're unlikely to ever lose it, because it's also hard to lose it. And who the heck is going to vote to have their right to clean water and clean air stripped from them? Just like with other constitutional amendments, generally it is a process that builds over time. So yes, we have had multiple states where the amendment's been proposed. It's been the subject of hearings. And then for one reason or another, it didn't make it all the way through the legislative process that year. We've never had an amendment that's gone through to the people and been rejected. But we have had, unfortunately, legislators in places like New Jersey and New Mexico and other states that have really misused their power to prevent the amendment from getting a hearing, even at the committee level, and allowing people to testify in support of it. If you can't get a hearing, you can't get a vote of the legislators. If you can't get a vote of the legislators, the amendment can't progress through the process. And unfortunately, in multiple states, it takes just one bad actor, one bad legislator misusing their power to accomplish that. But the people don't give up. Okay, so it didn't work this year. Next year, we're going to try again, right? And we're going to keep building the power base for the amendment, the understanding, the awareness for the amendment. And as people learn, the movement grows and the power of the movement grows. So I'm confident that everywhere where an amendment has been proposed, it will eventually be passed. It really just is a matter of doing the work to make it happen.
And talk, Meyer, if you would, also about doing the work, if you kind of grab the book behind you, because that's another project. I can't believe that, quote, in your spare time, you have it there too. So you're doing all this good stuff. Then what gave you the idea to write a book?
Well, when I conceived of this idea of a Green Amendment, I was going around trying to talk to people in different states about this really powerful victory in Pennsylvania and say, you should do this too. And, people would get excited, and then I would leave the room and nothing would happen, because I think people couldn't get enough knowledge or information about how this would work, how it would make a difference, how to pursue it in just that, 1 hour talk that I would give. And so what I really realized was people needed a lot more information and a lot more partnership and actual support. They needed me to help them, work through the process and learn and become leaders in their own right in this movement, which is really what I strive to do. And so I knew I needed a bigger platform to spread the message and give people the information they needed, And so when I think about a bigger platform, I think, well, how do you spread a message? Well, you can write a good song and sing it. I can't write music, and I sure as heck can't sing. You can make a movie or a documentary or something. I don't have the skills to do that. Or you can write a book, right? And I can write. And so I wrote, and it's been very well received, which is wonderful.
You can also, of course, be on the Blaine's World webcast. So that's another thing you can do.
And you can be on the Blaine's World webcast, which is where I am now. And I'm so excited that you've got such a broad audience of people. Where you are in North Carolina, there's not yet a Green Amendment proposal. Maybe there'll be one soon.
If you would show the book again then too, just hold it up. You had it right there in front of you. Okay. And so if folks want to get a copy of this book, what's the best bet?
So it's called The Green Amendment. The truth is if you type in The Green Amendment, you should find the book. But you can buy it at any independent bookseller. You can buy it online. Any place where you buy a book, you can get The Green Amendment. Or you can go to forthegenerations.org. There's a tab for the book, and you can purchase it from our website. Wherever it is that you buy this book, please know every penny of profit goes to the Green Amendment movement and the organization and the work. I don't take a single penny of this money because this is not about making money. This is about saving the world. And so if you buy the book, you are really helping to spread the message, make yourself more aware, but you're also helping to financially support the work that needs to be done to actually make this happen.
And to support the book and the organization, I guess then the best bet would be go through the website, right, directly, because then more of it comes to the organization or it goes directly to the organization.
That is true. If you buy the book directly from the organization, there are a few extra dollars that come back to support. On the other hand, for some people, right, they want to go to their local bookstore, or they have a favorite independent bookseller, or some of the other pathways online they use. And I respect that, whatever works for you. It is in print, but there is also an ebook version, and there's also an audio version.
And Maya, again, if you just repeat it. So to get the book and the organization you mentioned was what again? The website?
So the organization is called Green Amendments for the Generations. The website is www.forthegenerations.org.
Okay. And before I let you go, I'm going to have to ask you to do one other thing for me, Maya. You're such a interesting person to speak to, but I caught something you had on TikTok the other day, and I just loved it. And what gave you the idea to do that particular video we were talking about off the air?
So my daughter is constantly trying to, get me to be out there on TikTok and sort of share my pearls of wisdom or what's happening in terms of advocacy. And so I do it on and off. And she said, Mom, you've got to share, some good advice on how to gift wrap. We're at that gift wrapping time of year, and people are out there buying wrapping paper and things, and it really has a huge, heavy environmental footprint. Why don't you just share with them some of the things that we do to have, beautiful gifts to give to others, to have under the tree, if you have a tree, or on a table, if you have a table, however it is you celebrate, but to do it in a way that treads lightly on the earth. So I did a TikTok video with her, and she said, do a TikTok. So I did. And it's about how to gift wrap.
Was she the videographer?
She was. She just did it on my phone.
Okay.
She picked up my phone and I prattled like I do.
Well, just before I ask you to give a quick tip or two, how do people find you then on TikTok, or they want to see this video? It's a really cool video. How do they find you?
Just go look for Maya Van Rossum. And all my social media I have one for Green Amendments for the Generations. I have one for Delaware Riverkeeper Network, but Maya Van Rossum, or Maya K, my middle initial, Van Rossum, always finds me. And then I can also, from those social media pathways, take you back to my organizations.
And let me put you on the spot then. We didn't rehearse this, but one or two tips you can give us. If anybody's watching upcoming Christmas season, just a couple of days from now, what should they be doing?
Well, one thing that you can do is just get beautiful pieces of cloth. I have here two silks, but any beautiful cloth, and use that rather than paper to wrap your gifts. It's really lovely, and you can use it year after year after year, and it makes your gift pile or your individual gift very colorful. That's one option. If you have a really big gift and you don't have a big enough piece of cloth to manage it, another thing that's pretty simple is get a colorful pillowcase and put your gift in the pillowcase, and that can work really well. And then you can put it back on your pillow or use it again next year. So pillowcases are great reusable options. The thing that that we always did in my family growing up is anytime you got a gift in wrapping paper, you carefully unpeeled your tape and then you did your best to protect the paper, and you then would fold it up, and it would go up in the attic or in the basement, and every year you'd pull back out the used wrapping paper. And one of the beautiful things about this is You get to use wrapping paper over and over and over again. It's amazing how long it lasts. But, you also get to see who got the gift last year. And, I sadly lost my mother a long time ago now. It still hurts my heart, but it's so wonderful when every once in a while I pick out a piece of folded wrapping paper and it's my mom's handwriting on it. So that's a great option. And then of course there are reusable bags and reusable boxes, which is awesome. But the other thing is, these days people do so much online shopping, and sometimes you get brown paper or like this off-white paper that's used as stuffing in there. Take that paper, save it, wrap your gift in it, and then take markers and crayons and draw pretty pictures. It's a great way to engage kids in the gift wrapping. You use this paper and you encourage them to draw a picture or write their name or write, happy this or happy that. And they have a great lot of fun. So those are just some really, I think, great ideas for, again, beautiful gift giving, but that treads lightly on the earth.
And I thank you for that. And I'll share one thing that we do. We do sort of the same thing too with greeting cards. We recycle them. And so rather than just use them once, we save them. So next year, if you send them one, I cross out your name and, just send it, from me. And sometimes we've done it 3 or 4 or 5 times, and even we'll get a sympathy card, Maya, and say, sorry you lost, happy anniversary or whatever. But it's a great way to protect the environment, rather than,
I
throw
think
away.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
we do that all the time. Anyway, Maya, you are awesome also. I'll give you one more chance. If folks want to keep track of you, best bet is to what?
So look for, if you go online and you Google Maya Van Rossum, you'll find me. But also the 2 websites are Delaware Riverkeeper.org or forthegenerations.org. Or again, if you type in Maya Van Rossum, you'll usually find me, and on one pathway or another, and it all merges together because my life is just about trying to help people, help the earth.
Well, I think you do a great job of it. I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of the webcast. Hopefully it won't be another 20 or 30 years until you have you again. I'd also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti. And we'll, like I said, hope to see you, if not in person, online sometime in the near future. Maya, be well.
Thank you. You too.